I opened the email right there in front of everyone. The message was short, but it said everything I needed to hear. The HOA board had received multiple complaints about Karen's conduct, including her abuse of authority and unauthorized enforcement actions. They were launching an internal investigation and freezing all votes related to HOA leadership change, including the one Karen had clearly been banking on. I read it out loud so the crowd could hear. You could feel the shift immediately. The tension broke, not into celebration yet, but into a deep sense of relief and validation. Karen's face went pale. She tried to grab Mark's clipboard, saying, "This doesn't change the fact that he saw violations." But Mark had already taken a few steps back, clearly nervous now that things were unraveling. The officer got off his call and confirmed what Kyle had suspected: Mark was not licensed by the city or state. In fact, he wasn't affiliated with any recognized compliance agency. That's when the officer calmly asked Mark to stay while they figured things out. Karen, in a panic, demanded to leave, claiming she was being harassed, but by then, neighbors were already pulling out their phones. People started filming not to escalate things, but to document what had clearly turned into something bigger. Then a birthday party complaint. Even the officer didn't stop them. Just when I thought it was over, another twist hit. Sarah, the neighbor Karen had once threatened over mailbox colors, stepped forward holding a manila envelope. She handed it to the officer and said, "I didn't know when to bring this forward." But Karen's been submitting fake violation notices with forged board signatures. Inside were photocopies, dates, even screenshots of texts where Karen bragged about keeping the neighborhood in check. The officer looked stunned. Karen's mouth dropped open. I turned to my daughter, finally smiling again, and whispered, "Looks like your birthday just made neighborhood history." In the days that followed, everything finally started to settle. Karen was officially removed as HOA president after an emergency meeting. Turns out, several board members had been suspicious of her for a while, but didn't have enough proof to take action till that birthday party incident exposed everything. The fake violation letters, her fake inspector friend, Mark, and her constant harassment of residents all came to light in one dramatic afternoon. Mark disappeared quickly. After that day, no one ever heard from him again, and the police said they were looking into possible impersonation charges. As for the HOA, they brought in a third-party mediator to review the way things were being handled, and they even apologized to several families, including mine, for the unnecessary stress. A few neighbors who'd kept their distance before came by with cupcakes and small gifts for my daughter, trying to make up for the chaos. That meant more than they probably knew. We ended up rescheduling the rest of the birthday party for the following weekend. It wasn't as big, but it was full of laughter, sunshine, and no drama. And this time, the whole block came together, no HOA interference, just people being neighbors. It reminded all of us why we moved into the community in the first place. Looking back, it's wild to think a simple backyard birthday party turned into an HOA showdown. But maybe it needed to happen. Karen's control had gone unchecked for too long. Sometimes standing your ground is the only way to bring real change. So yeah, my daughter's birthday was unforgettable, not just for the cake or presents, but because it reminded everyone that your home should be your safe space. No clipboard, no fake rules, and definitely no Karen should ever take that away. I never thought throwing a birthday party for my daughter in our own backyard would lead to a 911 call. But that's exactly what happened. It was supposed to be a fun, family-filled Saturday. Balloons, cake, and a bunch of excited kids ready to celebrate my little girl turning 7. We had music playing, not loud, just upbeat enough to keep the party vibe going, and a bouncy house that my wife rented just for the day. Neighbors waved, a few even joined us. Everything felt perfectly normal until she showed up. Karen, the HOA president, marched over with her clipboard tucked under one arm and that look on her face, you know the one. She didn't even say hello. Just walked right into our backyard, uninvited, and started snapping photos of everything. Decorations, kids, my grill. It was beyond awkward. I calmly asked her what the issue was, and she fired back with some nonsense about HOA rules being violated too many guests. Noise complaints, unauthorized structures like the bouncy house, and a lack of prior event notice. It was like she had been waiting for a moment like this. I tried to reason with her, told her it was a private family gathering, and that I had every right to celebrate my daughter's birthday on my own property. But she wasn't having it. Instead, she pulled out her phone, dialed 911, and told them there was a situation at our address. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The kids went quiet, and you could feel the tension shift. My daughter clutched my arm, confused and scared. Now I'm standing there in my own yard, watching a police car pull up over a birthday cake. And that's when I realized this was no longer just about a party. This was something much bigger. The police officer stepped out of the car slowly, his eyes scanning the scene like he wasn't sure what to expect. He looked at the colorful balloons swaying in the breeze, the picnic tables filled with juice boxes and cupcakes, and then back at Karen, who was already waving him over like she was the victim. "Officer, this is an unauthorized gathering," she began, her tone sharp and full of fake concern. "There are far too many people here, and it's disrupting the neighborhood. This party is in violation of our HOA's guidelines." The officer glanced at me, then at my daughter, who was now standing behind me, clutching her stuffed unicorn like it could somehow protect her. I could see him trying to piece together why he was even called here. I stayed calm, explained that it was a private family birthday party, nothing commercial, nothing out of control. Just music, a grill, and some happy kids enjoying the day. What he said next shocked me. He told us he had to respond to the call, but that he didn't see any actual issue. Karen wasn't done though. She kept pointing out little things. The number of cars parked along the curb, the inflatable bounce house, even the fact that we had set up a folding tent to provide some shade. It was like she had made a list of things to nitpick before even walking over. That's when one of my neighbors, Mr. Thompson, stepped in. He's lived across the street for over 20 years and saw the whole thing happen. He calmly told the officer, "This is nothing but a birthday party. I've seen louder barbecues on game day." But even with his support, I could tell this wasn't just about rules. Karen seemed determined to make a point, and I started to wonder why. What was really behind her obsession with shutting us down? The officer asked Karen to step aside for a moment while he talked to me privately. I could tell he was trying to keep things from escalating, but there was a tension in the air that just wouldn't go away. Parents started gathering their kids a little closer, not out of fear of the police, but out of sheer confusion. A few neighbors looked at each other like they were silently asking, "Is this really happening right now?" I could feel eyes watching us from behind curtains across the street. Karen had stirred something up. It's me, and it wasn't just about today's party. While I was answering the officer's questions again, my wife whispered to me that this wasn't the first time Karen had gone out of her way to make things difficult. A few weeks ago, she apparently sent a formal warning letter about our garden lights being too bright after 9 p.m., even though they were solar-powered and barely lit the sidewalk. Another neighbor, Sarah, later told us Karen had filed complaints about their mailbox color being too modern. It was starting to feel like more than strict rule enforcement, more like a personal power trip disguised as HOA duty. Meanwhile, the kids had gone quiet again. The music was off. The birthday decorations that once felt festive now looked like evidence in a crime scene. I noticed Karen pacing near the driveway, still on her phone, likely calling someone else from the HOA board. That's when I remembered there was supposed to be a board vote coming up about increasing her authority as HOA president. Could this be about more than just a party? Maybe she was trying to prove something to the board, to the neighborhood, or even to herself. And right then, I noticed a man in a suit walking up the sidewalk. Not a guest, not a neighbor. He carried a clipboard and wore a badge I didn't recognize. That's when I knew things were about to get even more complicated. The man in the suit walked straight past the police officer and Karen, barely acknowledging either of them. He came up to me and introduced himself as Mark Daniels, a compliance investigator hired by the HOA board to conduct random property checks. Random on a Saturday, during a child's birthday party. He didn't even try to hide the fact that Karen had tipped him off. He started asking about property boundaries, the number of guests, and whether we had gotten written HOA approval for temporary event structures, meaning the tent and bounce house by now. The mood had shifted completely. Parents were whispering, some deciding it was better to quietly leave than get caught up in whatever this mess had become. My daughter sat on the back step, party hat slipping off, her smile long gone. I tried to keep my voice calm, but inside, I was boiling. Karen stood a few feet away, arms crossed like she had finally caught me breaking some unwritten law of the universe. The officer was still there, clearly uncomfortable, but not stepping in. It felt like no one wanted to deal with Karen directly. Mr. Thompson came back with two more neighbors, both of whom told the investigator that this was a normal gathering, not even close to disruptive. But Mark kept scribbling notes like it didn't matter what anyone said. He warned that further action might be taken by the HOA board, depending on what he documented today. Karen kept pushing, saying things like, "This is why we need stricter enforcement. And we can't let people just ignore the rules, or we'll have chaos." Then, just as I was about to respond, Mark pointed toward the side gate and asked if he could inspect the rest of my yard. My jaw clenched. That gate led to my shed, my garden, the private side of my home not party space. But before I could answer, Karen stepped in and said, "He doesn't need permission. We have the right." That was the moment everything changed. I stood frozen for a second. The way Karen said it like my property wasn't really mine hit a nerve. I looked at Mark, expecting him to correct her, but he just gave a slight shrug, like he agreed. That's when I pushed back. "You don't have the right to enter that part of my yard without permission. This is private property." Karen fired back instantly. "If you're violating HOA codes, we absolutely do." The officer stepped closer, sensing things were getting tense again, but didn't intervene. Just as Mark started moving toward the gate anyway, something unexpected happened. My neighbor's teenage son, Kyle, who had been quietly helping clean up party plates, called out, "Wait, is that the same guy from the city zoning office last year?" Everyone paused. Mark stopped walking. Karen looked thrown off. Kyle's dad stepped forward and added, "Yeah, he showed up at our house claiming to be with zoning enforcement. Said our carport violated new codes. We checked. He wasn't even listed on the city website." That's when the mood changed again. Mr. Thompson asked to see Mark's badge more closely. Karen tried to cut in, insisting Mark was legitimate, that she invited him and that the board had approved it. But the officer finally stepped in and asked Mark for identification. Mark hesitated too long. Then he pulled out a laminated ID that looked suspiciously homemade. It had a logo none of us recognized. The officer's face tightened. "Sir, where exactly are you employed?" he asked. Mark mumbled something about third-party compliance services contracted through the HOA. Karen jumped in again, saying this was all authorized. But now, the officer wasn't buying it. He asked both of them to stay where they were while he made a quick call to verify credentials. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an email from the HOA board secretary. Subject line: Urgent update, HOA leadership vote suspended pending investigation.